How's it going, Dakota?
It's going well. It's
Yeah,
going well.
good.
Period. How are you?
Good, good. It's Friday, so I'm excited.
It is Friday.
Yeah, so I mean, not that the weekend, as you said earlier, brings much anymore, but it's still Friday, so I'm excited.
Yeah, exactly.
Episode 9, how does that feel?
Episode 9, that is almost 9 whole hours of us sitting in front of a camera talking. How does it
Oh,
feel for you?
staring at each other. Good. Feels
Isn't it
good.
beautiful?
It is beautiful. Yes,
Wow. Are we having a moment right now?
I think so.
Oh no, there's a third person here. That's kind of
Oh, who
uncomfortable.
could it be?
So we are having our first guest here on the podcast today. It is actually one of our good friends and my brother who kind of
See?
produces our episode every single week. So this is Owen.
Oh, and
Hello.
welcome.
Welcome, Owen. How are you doing today?
I am good.
I
You look
really
good.
like your light and your setup. It's all perfect.
Thank you. I worked
You're
very
also
hard on it.
perfect. So,
So we invited Owen here because we wanted kind of to get a little bit of a tester before we get some other guests on. And we wanted to get his perspective on things because he has a really cool perspective and mindset.
yes,
Cool
because
outlook.
this
Pretty cool
episode
outlook.
we're talking about growing up in a small town.
Right. Which
So
is
it's
something,
also cool because you guys grew up in the exact same house a few years apart, but I'm sure your experiences were very different.
right. And I feel like all three of us kind of have different experiences with it too, because Val and I have like moved away and Val's came back to
Okay.
Norwich and I'm still, not that that's a bad thing. I'm just
Oh,
saying
like
we all
weird
have different.
flex. Though, right?
Okay, yes, I'm flexing. I don't live in Norwich anymore. Just kidding. I love Norwich.
Really?
So
Uh,
before we get onto that, I just want to do a couple of shameless promotions on our behalf because
Yes.
I like validation. So we are still running our giveaway until January 31st, I believe. Val,
That's
can you
correct.
confirm that? Perfect. So we were going to do the draw the 31st, and it's 2 really cool sweaters, guys, and a new network mask. All you have to do is go to our Instagram page, super simple. And yeah, you can win free stuff, which everyone loves free stuff.
So that's a
And
heck yes.
I've seen the mask. It is very nice. I kind of want one for myself. So,
There you are. See, and
Oh,
he's
and
not
have
even
you
biased.
entered the contest?
I have not. I did not think I was eligible, but I might have to.
You're
You
definitely
might have
eligible.
to. Yeah, so go follow us on Instagram. And then if you are listening to our episodes but not downloading them, we would really appreciate it if you would download them because that gets our numbers up and gets us on those charts. So
And also, it saves you data. If you're driving,
Yeah.
you're not on
I was like,
Wi-Fi,
how is that
you
possible?
download it.
Okay.
Saves you data. You're not using
Makes the
data
distance.
to listen to the podcast while driving. It's a win-win for everybody. So, download the episode.
Love
Thank
it.
you, Owen. Download the episode. And that's basically all I have for our intro today. Do
Our
you
little
have anything?
housekeeping. No, nothing top of mind. I'm just excited to talk about growing up in a small town.
Same. It's an experience. I think that not everyone experiences it, but it's like it's a very weird and different experience than it is growing
Yeah.
up in a more populated area.
Yes, agreed.
So let's get down to it. Let's talk about it.
Owen, what was your favorite part about growing up in a small town?
That's hard to say, honestly. Like, there's good and bad about it, but if we're just gonna
Mhm.
focus on the positive for now, probably knowing everybody, which I guess is also a bad
Yeah.
thing, but it's
Yeah.
kind of cool. Like, you're just walking down the street and just knowing everybody, not being, I guess, a sense of safety too is nice. Like, you're never really nervous or sketched out going places because you know where everything is, you know everybody there. Probably
And it's
that.
also that unspoken rule too, where like we're kind of all looking out for each other because we kind of all know who each other is.
Exactly.
So even if you're walking down the street and you don't see people, you kind of know that people are, there's always those nosy neighbors sitting in their house looking out the front window. Like you kind of always have eyes on you no matter where you are. So if God forbid anything were to happen, I listen to a lot of true crime podcasts. So,
Oh
you
my
know, that's
God.
always in the back of my head.
I don't know how you like even walk without looking, I don't know, over your shoulder. I would be so paranoid.
Yeah. But I agree with Owen. It is interesting that you know everyone kind of knows you. There's definitely a lot of pros and cons to that.
Yeah, it's a blessing and a curse. Like you were never gonna get harmed without someone knowing, but you could never get away with anything without someone knowing either.
Exactly. There was nothing like I couldn't do anything in town without my parents finding out.
Yes, exactly. But
Not that
living
I,
on like the outskirts of town, when I came into town to hang out with like the town kids, that was cool. Like walking the Max or just like hooligan things, going on trails. Like that was just an experience in itself. I did. I loved it. I loved it so much.
I love that you refer to us as town kids.
You were my town friends.
Yeah, that's true. Not that you live basically in town.
But but you guys could just walk to each other's houses. If I wanted to walk to your house, I'd have to set aside an hour to walk, and
Fair.
it just didn't happen. But you guys would just house hop, and I mean, pre-COVID, obviously, but there was just some cool stuff. Like you guys would do homework together after school. I was like,
Yeah, and I feel like that has also like it's a strong sense of connection to everyone around you in your whole town. Even if you don't necessarily know what people's stories are or much about them, you still kind of do feel connected because you're both from that small same place where everyone is a community.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
do you
I would
think that
totally agree.
when you left Norwich to go to college and you kind of lived in a bigger city for a year, did you feel like it was like kind of less of a sense of community or less of a connection with your peers?
I would say that I probably made it less of a sense of connection because I didn't like the city. And now I look back and I wish I would have enjoyed it more. But I would just like go in for my classes. I had my few friends, and then I would literally get out of Dodge. Like every weekend I was home working. I didn't live the Hamilton life, I wouldn't say. So yes, it definitely felt a lot more disconnected. But like there were some friends that lived with us too, which was nice. But I didn't really live the college life. So yes, but by my own doing as well. That makes sense.
That does make sense, yeah.
What about for
I
you when you went to school?
I feel like this is kind of like a con for living in a small town because there is such that strong connection to your hometown
Mhm.
friends or your hometown people. When I first moved here, I almost found it hard to put myself out there and make friends because
Your
the
hometown
friends
homies went there.
exactly and like those friends I've had since I was in diapers. So like I didn't have to really make new
Ah,
friends
there it is.
except for high school,
Except for me.
except for you and Mackenzie Riley.
Oh, shout out to Mackenzie Riley.
Shout out to Mackenzie Riley, legend. Oh, and how did you feel like when you go to college? Because you don't actually live
Mhm.
anywhere. You're still living in Norwich. So how do you feel when you're like in class trying to make those connections with
Oh
people?
yeah.
It's definitely weird now at college because I just started this year and like COVID and everything was already happening when I went. So I don't even know what half the people in my class look like because they're always wearing a mask and everything.
Okay.
So it's way less I guess less opportunities to actually make friends because everybody's
Yeah.
stressing out like 6 feet apart and all of that. And so I guess it's way less inviting to go talk to some people, which I enjoy because I don't like talking to new people. So
Mhm.
it was a good excuse for me to kind of be in my own bubble and do my own thing. And especially like, yeah, just
That's very
being,
true.
yeah, it just
Like
depends on how you look at things, right? Like if you are interested in meeting new people and becoming friends and expanding your horizons a little bit, it's definitely good. But if not, college can be kind of stressful because if I was the only person there, kind of isolating, it would kind of make me feel pressured into going to talk to people I don't even want to talk to, but just so I'm not the weird kid
yeah.
by himself,
Oh yeah.
which I've never been because, like we said, like growing up in a small town, you know all of the kids in your school, you've known them your whole life. So even going to high school, when a bunch of other small towns get blended together into one school, it's like that experience all over again. You don't know anybody except your small group of friends. So you kind of just stick with the same friends your whole life kind of thing
Yeah.
around here if you aren't very good with talking to new people or whatever. So,
Yeah. That's very true.
And I almost find that to be a theme as well from with a lot of like the people that we grew up with is like maybe putting ourselves out there and making new friends and like being super chatty with people we don't
Mhm.
know isn't really a main part of our personalities, even in
Yeah,
the
because
field.
it was never necessary until we were older. Like in kindergarten, if you threw some kids in a room, they're gonna be friends. But when you become older, you have the self belief or the self doubts that get in the way and your insecurities, and you don't want to do it.
Exactly. And I
Better where it's
think that
comfortable.
true. I also think that like growing up in a small town versus growing up in like a city, I don't want to say like we're different, but like I do think we tend to value things a little bit differently and we put more priority towards different things, say, than people who grew up in a big city. Like, for example, I'm thinking like all three of us are really big on supporting local and like
Mhm.
putting back into the community. But people who grow up in a big city where you can go to like a billion different restaurants for whatever you want for dinner or whatever. In our city, we had what, one sit-in restaurant?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
like we obviously are super big on supporting that, and like all of our businesses are family owned in the small town. So we put a lot of
Mhm.
value on that, which I found when I moved away and moved to a bigger city. There wasn't as many people who wanted to look for those local mom and pop shops, and they were just like, convenience, let's Uber Eats
Mm,
it.
There's
yeah.
less incentive to as well because when you're in the big city, there's all those big chains. They're
Right.
never gonna struggle. A big chain is just like the only big chain we have here in town is Tim Hortons, and it's busy
Oh
nonstop.
my gosh.
But
All
if
day
the
long.
the local restaurants that we have here, if we don't support them and eat them and everything like that, they're gonna go out of business because if the people in the town don't support it, there's nobody there. They can't pay the bills, right? So when you're in a big city, you kind of don't have to. People look at it like they don't have to support the small mom and pop shops because somebody else is doing it.
Yes.
But
Yes.
everybody has that state of mind, and they don't last as long there because they think I don't have to go there. Like it seems like it's always busy or whatever. But if everybody
Mhm.
had that mindset, there's gonna be none of it, and the big chains are gonna take over
Take
everything.
over.
Yeah, like if you have like a small restaurant right next to a Wendy's, right, or something like
Yeah.
that, it's just so it's kind of good being in a small town. I feel like it's easier to stay open if there's less options, but also the
Mhm.
town being so small, if you open up a restaurant and it's not good, the whole town knows about it and nobody's going there. We've seen a
That's very
variety
true.
of restaurants open in this one spot, and they keep closing and new owners, and then it closes again and then new owners, and eventually a big chain came in and opened up there, and they've stayed open. Like they're successful.
Right.
Are they
They're
open?
Tito's.
Tito's.
Tito's is open.
Oh yeah. They're rocking it.
Yeah.
They are doing well, and I find for me in the city too, a lot of the mom and pop shops here, or like the family owned businesses, like the restaurant
Mhm.
that I used to work at, they're successful because they're really good at building that sense of community even in the big
Yes.
city. So like the
Yes.
restaurant that I used to work at, they do a lot of like Facebook engagements, and they're always talking to their customers, and they have such a good like group of regulars that they've just built,
Mhm.
that even during this lockdown, they have those people that are there to support them because they know that they built that community and that feeling of like, oh, I want to go there, because it's not just like a big box store or whatever, a chain restaurant.
Yeah, and I think growing up in a small town, like we, as Owen was saying, like we have seen the effects of what lack of support does. Where in a big city, you're right, like there's higher turnover. You see a new storefront going up, and you're like, okay, but it doesn't hit you the same as when you're like, oh man, that was so and so's parents, or like you know the owners in that sense.
Exactly. They're a part of your community. They're almost family. Like you want to see them succeed.
Yes.
And I think that's how smaller businesses should be running things right now, and going forward, because that's how you keep your business going, in my opinion, from my many business degrees that I have on
Yes.
keeping a place
Yes.
open. Like I'm really smart about that. But
Now,
that's
Owen.
it.
Oh.
No, I was just continuing to talk. Go on.
Oh, and do you see this with like working at I gotta slow it down, Panton Paint and Collision. Like have you seen, like obviously Joe went from like started his own business. What have you seen in terms of small town community support?
I think a big thing is when he worked at a previous shop, um, it was a small shop, only two people there, so everybody knew that it was him doing a majority of the work.
Mhm.
And so that established his name as he knows what he's doing, he's good, he's reliable, etc. So when he moved and started his own thing, everybody still went there because they knew the quality of work was there. It was just at a different location. So
Yeah.
I think the best thing that you can do is have the consistency, I guess, and
Yeah.
like put in the effort, and then no matter where you go, people are going to follow
Yeah.
because you establish your name, and then the rest of it doesn't really matter as long as they know that it's the same person and right,
Ooh.
like
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
people behind it.
Right. Like it's like Dakota as a real estate agent. It doesn't matter what brokerage you're with, like what, or if it was Remax or Century 21, people are going to come to you for Dakota.
Exactly. And I
Yeah.
like what you said, Owen, about that consistency, because that
Yeah.
really is the
Your
most important thing,
reputation.
Yeah,
your reputation.
Mhm. Which small
And
towns.
it's so important, especially I think more in small towns, to keep that reputation, because you have one
Yes.
bad transaction, or let's say Joe, we're going to use Joe as an example. I'm sorry, Joe,
Yes.
but let's say Joe had done a super bad job at one point, and that just would trickle on because
Word
they
of
would be
mouth.
like word of mouth. That's what I'm trying to
Yes.
say. I'm fumbling a little bit, but you
But
know what
that
I'm
is
going.
the number one referral system that we as humans, I'll say, use, because it's not Google reviews, it's not your Facebook reviews, it's someone said you're really good, that's why I'm going to come to you. Or you trust the name because his dad was really good at it, which is also a thing with small towns, that starting your own business without someone that was in that business before is tough, because they're like, who are you? And like, say Joe's dad had a shop that was Pant and Paint and Collision, and he was taking it over. It's a bit easier because there's an established reputation. But for Dakota or myself, or if Owen, you wanted to start your own company, it's tougher to establish starting from the ground up. But it's you, which is cool. Like, you can totally, you build it brick by brick.
Right. And I think us coming from a small town gives us a bit of an advantage over, let's say, our competitors or our colleagues, because we know how important that word of mouth referral system is. And we know how important that community is to support our business. When compared to people who are growing up in a big city, they don't have that sense of community. They don't have that sense of referral. There's people everywhere. So if they have one bad transaction or one bad experience, it's maybe not as big of a deal.
Exactly. Yeah. Like if you go to Walmart and the cashier is rude to you or whatever, and you say, like, you tell the manager, like if you're having a freak out and you tell the manager, I'm not coming back here. They don't care because there's
like,
300
okay,
other people in the parking lot waiting to come in, especially right now when there's lineups. Okay, see ya. Let the next person in. And right, but if you're in a small town with not as large of a customer base, but you just have those few loyal customers, you need to count on them and you need to keep them coming back. So but that's not to say that you're not allowed to make mistakes, but it's just the way, if you make it right, right? Because people are understanding. Everybody makes a mistake, but if you make it right, then that just looks good on you in the end. But if you make a mistake, you don't fix it, they're all over Facebook, have your say in Norwich, or telling their friends or whatever, like, this place, I had this experience here, blah, blah. But if you made the mistake and then fixed it, they shouldn't really have anything negative to say about it. So it's just all about how, especially in a small town, how you treat people. That's the biggest thing.
Yes, word of mouth is so important.
And especially in a small town, I find there's a lot of like a herd mentality of like, this person said this, I automatically agree. Like, outlaw them. We're seeing that right now with a particular store in Norwich going through right now because of certain protocols
They're
going
mask
on.
protocols.
Yeah. So that mentality is just, which is good if they're doing a bad thing. Like, I kind of agree with it if they're not going to fix it. But if it's just not really, if it's something that's not that big of a deal and everybody does that, it can also be a negative. But
we also need to educate ourselves too, right? And I don't know if that's a small town thing, but like, even with like voting, when I was able to vote, I just asked my parents who they voted for. Like, I didn't care to dig into it, but now that I'm seeing more big world, I'm more invested in those types of things.
Okay, so let me ask you this. So you said you maybe weren't as keen on educating yourself. Sorry, my fingers are,
I love that,
going a little bit. So you weren't as keen on educating yourself kind of before you went out and moved and saw the world. Do you think we, as people who grew up in a small town, are at a disadvantage compared to those who grew up in a city, who may have access to more education, or who may have, we'll say, better education, but not to say that?
I think that there's less exposure. I think that there's less diversity, which leads to there being less exposure because we're not as disrupted. We don't see rallies. We don't see, like, we're all just like kind of operating in our own little world. So if there's a wave, it's because, I don't know, someone's dog pooped on someone else's lawn and they didn't pick it up. Like, it's not like, oh my gosh, someone just got shot or stabbed. It's small world problems. I almost want to say like small town problems, which is as a suiting hashtag.
Yeah.
So then we don't feel that we need to educate ourselves on that. But if say there was a war in our town over race, I think that growing up, we would have been more up to speed on it. That's my
But
thought.
we're kind of seeing in our specific hometown right now, we're not seeing a war on race, but we are seeing a war on masks. And I think that I don't know if I agree with you completely on that, only because there's a lot of people like some arguments. I think our town is really, really divided on the whole mask situation, which is a little bit scary because not to say that if you would educate yourself that you would automatically change your mind, but I do feel like a lot of the points made on the anti-mask cap are coming from a place of maybe, I don't want to say uneducated because I don't want to call it
emotion.
But just like not experiencing that diversity and not experiencing, life in another place of the world. Like we are in the small town, so we're kind of in a bubble, so we don't have the effects of like, the big city. It's not as big of a snowball effect. So I think
that we agree, though. No?
Maybe I misunderstood what you said.
Okay.
What I'm trying to say is that there is a bit of a race war, not a race war, a mask war right now.
Okay. Right. But growing up, like I'll say we didn't know gangs. We didn't know any sort of like racism wasn't necessarily a thing that we faced. But so yes, right now there's currently something going on, but growing up in a small town, there wasn't as many waves or ripples that we were like, oh, pick a side or educate yourself, pick a side. I feel, or maybe it was just me, like I went more with the flow because it didn't hurt anyone no matter what I did.
Right. But let's say putting ourselves back a couple of years, let's say we were in high school or even like older elementary school and this mask thing was happening then. Do you think we would be on the side of, the educated and like kind of getting ourselves out there and really educating ourselves to fully understand had we not left the small town?
But
or do you think
the people that would be against you in their mind think they're educated too, right? It depends on what your sources are, because you can be stubborn and read a certain thing and they think they're just as educated as you are, because if you're both learning but learning from different sources, like left or right, whatever, you both think you're educated, so you'll never find a middle ground, because if everybody's so stubborn and not willing to listen to each other, you know what I mean? Like there is a right and a wrong, but the people that are in the wrong think they're right because of where they're getting their information from.
Yes, right. And you nailed it with saying sources, because I think it's like, yes, everyone's getting it from different sources, and they trust, like, even like say you read one article and you're like, yep, that makes sense, then you go with that. So Dakota, are you asking what I would be doing?
I'm asking what you think that our stance would be if we were in this situation, say 10 years ago.
I think we like pro-mask or anti-mask.
Yeah.
I think we'd be pro-mask.
I think we would be too.
I think most people would be. I don't think it's the internet is what's the problem is here. If this happened 10 years ago, it would just be the government would come out and say, here's this mandate, do it, whatever. But because now people have a platform to spew all this out and way more sources of information, everybody thinks that they're right, no matter what. Right. Everybody thinks they're right. So because of the internet and having Facebook and because of this herd mentality that I talked about before, no matter what your opinion is, there's going to be one person that agrees with you. No matter what. No matter what. There's going to be somebody that agrees with you. So when you have, in a small town, with a small population, it's harder to find that. But when the whole world is at your disposal via the internet, there's going to be people that agree with you. So if you go back 10 years and this happens, most people are going to be on the same page because it's just the trend the town is following because they're just listening. But nowadays, you can have a friend in Florida and in Germany all at once at the same time, and everybody thinks different things, but people are agreeing with you. So it's kind of the internet. If it didn't exist, this whole thing probably would have been over by now, because people aren't trying to be edgy or trendy or whatever. They're just trying to do what is right. But now there's all these factors involved that make people want to do a certain thing. So I think everybody, if this happened 10 years ago, would probably be pro-mask. and the pandemic probably would be, if not over, definitely a lot less
Winding
impactful as it
down.
is, because everybody just cared about their neighbor and wanted to keep everybody safe instead of
Mhm.
being cool on the internet or starting a thing on Norwich
Being
buy and
big.
sell gossip because they're just trying to get attention,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
So that's my
I completely agree. That was like a big mic drop moment. Rant. Loved it.
Yeah, you just like made so many cool connections in my brain. I loved it.
Yeah, me too. I was hanging on the edge every single word. And I also think what you said about, that herd mentality and kind of that snowball effect is people love to disagree with other people too.
exactly.
Mm.
People love just a little bit of organized chaos.
Mm. Hmm.
And that's what it comes back to, like social media and Facebook pages. Way easier to get those clicks and people engaging with you
Yeah.
and just arguing with you because you have a platform for it. People
Right.
are way less likely to argue in person,
Oh God,
100%,
yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
now everybody's hiding behind their screen, saying whatever they want to say, just for the simple fact of entertainment, because they're
Yeah.
bored, right? But
And
if you're
then
walking through Walmart, nobody's gonna say anything to you if you're not doing anything wrong, just to start an argument. But if they're
yeah,
sitting on their couch watching a movie with a blanket on and their phone in their lap, they're gonna say whatever they want because they can't do anything to you,
right. And
right?
that's where
Like,
opinion becomes information
yeah.
that we take and run with.
Yeah, well, information because I read it on Facebook from this person. It's right, and
Huh.
there's 100 people also commenting. I agree because it's everybody from the world in one place, and they just
Right. And it's also like a me and my group against the world type thing. Like you always feel like people are trying to tear you down, like the world is against me. A lot of people have that mentality. So it's really easy to kind of bite back and be like, well, no, this is what I think. And it's right and you're wrong. Do you either of you have any ideas on ways to not like fix this, but like combat it a little bit? So here I go with my bunny ears again.
the pandemic.
Hmm.
No, like the herd mentality, the
Oh.
snowball effect type Facebook situation.
Educate yourself.
Yeah, that's a big one. But also people need to stop being bored all the time
Yes.
and
Go do
find something
productive
more
things.
productive to do besides
Mhm.
argue on Facebook.
Yeah.
Because
Or
half
post
the stuff I
positive
read, I don't even think people genuinely believe it. I think they're just saying it to get a reaction out of people, and that's a huge thing. There's other people that are reading that and taking it as facts,
things.
which is also a problem. So I mean, you can't say just have one reputable source because then you're just following whatever. But I think
Or
it's hard to say, right? Like, go ahead.
I was about to say, like, either educate yourself or keep doing what you're doing. Like, if you want to be naive, I'll say in that sense, and like not fact check and those things, but then don't be the first one to say something. Does that make like keep to yourself if that's how you want to be? Like, keep your blinders
Yeah.
on, but don't be the first horse out of the gate.
Right. Like Owen said, like people will read anything on Facebook as a fact.
Yeah.
It's like Wikipedia, like anyone can edit Wikipedia, but now
Mhm.
Facebook is Wikipedia because anyone can post anything on there and there will
Right.
be anyone can see it. And then all those people now can choose to believe that that is fact, which is absolutely terrifying.
Do you ever read something and then you go to tell someone about it and you're like, oh, I saw this thing on Facebook, and you're like, oh, that's my problem.
Yeah.
Yes, all the time. Or they'll be like, that's not true. And I'm like,
You're like, are you sure? Because the article looked pretty real.
right.
Yeah.
And all I did was read one sentence on the top. And I'm like,
Yes. Yes.
I catch myself doing that all the time. And I'm like, this is the issue.
Yes. Yes.
That was good. That was a good little chat
That was-
about
I love that.
social media. We kind of went away from growing up in a small town a little bit and more to the problems of social media, but I loved it.
But that's also a problem in a small town.
Mhm.
No matter what your opinion is, everybody knows it. But people also like to not get along. And in a small town, there's going to be, I don't know if it's just a Norwich thing, but there's two groups of people. And they just, all the time, just
Flashing.
against each other. But issues in a small town small issues become a way bigger thing because there's nothing going on. So no matter what is going on, becomes amplified times 10.
Oh, the
Like,
Norwich tractor pull.
exactly. Anything that's going on just becomes amplified because there's nothing else going on. So if you're in Toronto and somebody didn't wear a mask in Tito's, nobody cares. because
That's
everybody
so
else is doing it.
true.
But if you're here, everybody hears about it because it's the only story of the day. So
Our
and everybody
news has
spends
like
their
a
whole day
lot.
on it.
Yeah, it has like a way longer shelf life
Yes.
because there's not as many hot things. Where in a city, there's so many things that it's like it just falls into the mix. Like you're right, if there's a death or what's the word? It's an A word when two people affair. There we
Altercation?
are.
Oh,
Affair.
fair.
Affair altercation, like like a baby's born, whatever. Any sort of news like that, it sticks way longer.
Yeah.
Very good point. Which is
Right, and
also, yeah, no, go.
Okay. I just kind of wanted to flip it around on itself and talk about kind of the positives a little bit, because I think we've been focusing on the negatives, but there are those positives, like you said, like people have a baby, like the whole town is there and they're all congratulating them, and it's kind of like a great feeling. You post on Facebook and suddenly you have hundreds of people.
Oh my gosh, Dakota.
Suddenly you have hundreds of people like congratulating you and like support there. So like we're not saying that Facebook is the devil and small towns are horrible for gossip, but
No, well,
yeah, there are negatives, but there are also positives. That's all I wanted to
for
say.
sure. Yes, definitely. And I think that like do your part in posting positive things on social media as best as you can. I'm not saying like everything in life is rainbows, but like be real and also remember like just have a heart when you're doing intention
Right.
behind.
Personally, every time I see like a positive post on Have Your Say in Norwich or whatever Facebook page there is,
I love it.
Yeah, I try to interact with it. I try and give it a like, give it a heart or whatever, just to let people know like let's try and be a little bit more positive. Like obviously we do have this big, I don't want to call it a war, but it's like a big argument between the two sides. A divide, that's it. But that doesn't mean that we need to just constantly be negative, because that's just going to snowball effect again. The problem's getting bigger, like Owen mentioned, and then nothing's being resolved, and this pandemic is going to continue for years, which no one wants, right? Like we all want this to be over.
Right. If we could all work together for the common good, that would be, we'll get there.
Right. Beautiful.
Love it. But I would also say too, going back to growing up in a small town, having your own business, like it is cool. Like Josh Deming is with now Norwich Insurance Brokers. So I saw him come up on LinkedIn. I grew up with him, went to high school with him. And I was like, that is so cool. So I reached out to him, like, you want to support those young people in business that you see up and coming.
That's so funny. Guess who I had a meeting with this morning?
Was it Josh Deming?
It was Josh Deming.
No, for your home and auto?
Yeah. No.
Oh.
Just for we're just to work together. Yeah. Anyway, small world. Yeah, that's a perfect example of growing up in a small town. Like those small people, we all know each other and we're all like here to support each other. So.
Oh my gosh. Okay, we need to talk more about that, but yeah.
Sorry, I did not mean to cut you off there. Continue your little story.
Shout out to Josh Deming. No, but that's I was so excited to see someone young that I knew doing something that I've been looking for someone for personal and then for like referral purposes. And I was like, yes, let's get coffee. So we got coffee about a month ago. It was very wild.
Right. Another thing that I want to talk about was growing up in a small town. I'm going to switch the whole topic here real quick. I remember growing up, like we never locked anything, like cars, houses, there was, like we talked about at the beginning of the episode, there was such a sense of security.
Yeah.
That no one feared anything. Like everyone trusted each other, which is just like thinking back right now, like imagine going to bed and not locking your car door.
No.
I would never do that. Not even just like in like the city that I live in now, but like my hometown, if I was to move back there, like I just couldn't.
It's there is a total different level of security and knowing that your neighbor has your back sort of thing.
Right. Yeah, because there is that security though, because I remember when one of our cars got broken into, when we were talking about this right before we started recording. No, I think it was a long time ago, long before the Jeep. But we got
the red one.
Yeah, that actually was the red one, Dad's old. But
community.
That knows more about my family. Anyways, Owen, do you want to tell the story?
Well, we never locked anything because there was just no need to. But then, this was a long time ago, like probably close to 10 years. Not even, maybe 5. But
yeah,
anyway,
it wasn't
that long ago. But anyway, so people were going around everybody knew that the cars were unlocked, so they would go in the cars and try to find valuables, change, GPSs, whatever, to steal and sell or whatever with. Well, as soon as that started to happen, like people were seeing this kid do it, leaving the driveway or whatever. Like my parents saw him, and everybody just knew right away who it was. So like, not a very smart thing to do. Like because everybody knows everybody, like I said earlier, and you can't get away with anything. So
Right.
you
That's
have
such
to
like a
be
big.
honest. It keeps you honest being in a small town.
It does, because like in Guelph,
Yeah,
people walk by my house every single day. I have no idea who they are.
you don't know who they are.
I don't leave my house right now because of the pandemic, but like I still, people watch sometimes out my window, and like I see the same people walk by every day. They could, well, I would never know their name, where they live. I wouldn't
That's
be able
really
to
true. I never
look.
thought of anything
What they
like that.
drive, what beer they drink,
Yeah, but like
But
how
like,
they like their pizza.
if you sit at
exactly.
my house and look out the window, the same three ladies are gonna walk by and you know their name. I don't know how.
And-
You just know it. It's just you've known
Right.
it your whole life. You just know that's Susie.
Yeah,
That is
that's
Susie.
it. That's what I was thinking too. Like,
That's
what
Sherry.
that's Sherry. Yeah, Sherry. Love good old Sherry.
Lisa, shout out Lisa.
Yeah. And like even sometimes like people would have like everyone just know them around the town, even if it wasn't by like their real name. But
That's
like you
true.
could say
Yeah.
anything, like I'm trying to think of an example, like bicycle lady or whatever. Like
Santa Claus, that bus driver.
Yep, Santa Claus, or Brian on the lawnmower. Like
Lawnmower Brian.
yeah, like everybody, like even if you don't know their name or their story, you know who they are, and you could say that to someone and they would be like, oh yeah, instantly know.
Yeah, they're like, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah,
Oh, I
probably.
love it. All right,
But
we
if-
should wrap this up. Oh no, we should not wrap this episode up.
Hello.
Dakota.
Just kidding. But if I was to say like, oh, that guy that always walks the husky by my house, which there is a guy who, like, every time
Him.
you look out, he's walking his husky.
Husky.
But if I was to say that to anyone else other than the people in my house, they'd be like, what?
Who?
Yeah.
You also
Because
know
you
their
have
dog?
more than one stoplight and two intersections, right?
Yeah,
That's true.
with
In my
population.
little in my neighborhood, there's probably more people than all of Norwich. So
That's so wild.
that checks out. Anyways, let's wrap up episode 9.
Yeah.
Owen, how was it? What did you think?
It was good. It's a little
Thank you for
nerve-wracking,
coming
but
on.
yeah, no problem. Thanks for
I
the invite. I'm always here silently listening and doing recordings and everything like that. So
He does all of the grunt work. Val and I just talk, and Owen does
Yes,
everything.
we are very grateful for
so
Owen.
just know you might
Yeah,
not
very
see
good.
me, but I'm always there. So I'm always
Yeah.
there.
He's
Always
like big
there.
brother.
He always has our back.
Yeah. And Owen, you did like an amazing job this week. I just want
Thank
to
you.
say. So thank you. You killed it. I really
Mhm.
love listening to your perspective. But anyways, guys, I think
All
we got to
right.
wrap it up.
Peace and blessings.
Peace and blessings. Make sure you download our podcast. If you download our podcast, I will be your best friend and love you forever.
Yeah, download
Ooh,
it.
big commitment.
Also, subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're watching on YouTube. That helps out a lot. Watching the number grow is very satisfying. Like the video, share it. Interact with our socials because it's very motivating to see the platforms grow.
Mhm.
And like they're growing slowly, but the growth is there, and we really appreciate it. So
We
just
really do.
continue doing that.
We love
All
it.
right.
We love you. Stay safe and have fun.
Bye, guys.
Goodbye.